Welcome to the Bob Ross Show. Today we're going to talk about dodging and burning today. Just kidding. We're going to talk about dodging and burning, that's the truth. However, the thing that I do want to mention is we just finished up our cleaning and our healing and coloning. So we're going to have a lot of fun doing this. We're going to have a lot of fun evening out the skin and making the companion step to our cleaning process. It's because I think, we've talked about dodging and burning quite a few times already with this tutorial. But what I do want to talk about is the setup. I want to talk about helper layers and how I see things when it comes to dodge and burn. Now with the actions provided, we're going to set it up right away. We're not going to go back into explaining every single detail again, as we've done that quite a few times. But here we have our dodge and our burn, and also our black and white adjustment layer so we can see the tonality. The next thing that I do want to add here is going to be our noise layer. And for those of you who are not familiar with what I mentioned in the past, I add a noise layer a lot for beauty, because sometimes when you have areas that don't seem to have a lot of texture, the color feels very muddy. And the other thing that it does is whenever I add the noise here as a helper layer, it breaks up a lot of those pixel level details that necessarily don't need to be looked at. So it's kind of like a mesh that prevents you from going too far in dodge and burn and also getting distracted. Oddly enough, when I have this noise layer on as a helper layer, what I find personally, and those of you who have experience with retouching already know this, or might know this from familiarity, is that you tend to oversee things when you look at skin at pixel level. And what this will do for you is when I turn that off, it becomes really hard to decide what to dodge and what to burn on a pixel level. If I add some noise to break it up, it stops you from looking that far. It prevents you and only allows you to focus on the bigger picture here, which is these little areas of blemishes and blotchiness. So that should be pretty transparent. Like on this level, take a look at this. Here's a perfect example. You see how many light and dark areas there are. How would you even know what to even out? The thing is, there's macro and micro. Macro is at a distance like this. And when you enable this, it allows you to focus now just on these larger areas, the ones that matter the most. So I'm going to keep that on, and I'm going to keep that on because I love using that helper layer. The next thing that we're going to do is, because this is an image which is quite bright overall in some areas, and we want to see the tones even more, we're going to bring another helper layer. I'm going to call it curve. Well, I'm not going to call it curve, it is a curve. And then bring it down from the midpoint. And these three are my helper layers. So I'm going to group those together, Command C, and clicking on the top one, which is the curve, holding Shift and clicking on the black and white. Then hitting Command G, and I'll name this helper layer stack. Okay, this helper layer stack is going to be the most important thing here for us, because it's allowing us to see in a temporary way. And this view here, it allows me to pick up a lot more distractions as well. So first thing first, I'll click on my dodge mask, and I'm going to go into my brush tool. I'm going to go and click on my flow as 2% or so, using these settings with my curve. So I'm not putting it that high, but it's a little bit high, enough where it's enough for what we need. And then I'm going to go into my, actually I'll do 1% for now, but 2% is also fine. Let's do 2% because that was a little bit slow, I think. And I'm simply going to fix and even out this patchiness. What I want you to know is, in case you can't differentiate how much to go, just pay attention to me and my before and after, and it will make sense when you see what I did and why I did it. I think seeing is believing. When you see the end result, you get a better sense of what I actually saw to begin with, right? Because when I'm working, I can't really tell you what I'm looking at, aside from the fact of me verbally saying, focus on the dark areas. But what does that mean actually? And the quickest way to communicate that is to do it first and then turn it on and off and show you. You can see I'm changing my brush size as I'm working, so it's Q and W on my shortcuts as I've changed. And if I turn it on and off, you see exactly what I mean. You can see those dark patches that were kind of splotchy, just even out. That's where we're trying to go. We're trying to even out some of that dark patch of skin so that it blends in with the starting area. Why do we do this? Well, this allows us to keep the natural transitions in the skin. It keeps it beautiful. I really like it a lot. And that's why I think you should do it. That's why I think that it works the best too, because I mean, if you can control the transitions without overdoing it, I think that's kind of the holy grail of retouching, right? Because you can then carve the skin in a way where it looks good. It looks really nice. I'm using my burn now. I'm filling in these white dots here, just really gently. I turn that on and off. You can see there's white flecks. I just pull that in. Again, this is all about practice. You don't have to do the level that I'm doing it in. The main things that I want you to take care of to start with, it's going to be this area here. Then we'll do the side of the mouth here. Basically, there's a dark patch, a big dark patch right there. That tends to stay there for most images. Most people tend to have that. On the other side of the face is another patch here. So we'll take care of that. And also near the mouth. Again and again, I'm going to say this because this is the most important thing to say. The size of the brush must be equal to the size of the patch that you take out. It cannot be bigger, because if it is, it's going to brighten the areas around the patch, leading you to have double patch. You're going to have a halo around the patch of skin that you're whitening, which is going to become really obvious. If you mess up, let's mess up. You know what? Let me just show you what it looks like. What can we do here? Mess up. Let's do it somewhere else. Like, let's do this. If I brighten the forehead, and I'm like, oh no, I went too far. What a shame. What you can do, simply put, is just go back to your brush, invert, and have a black one, and then just paint over it again. No big deal, okay? Don't freak out. It's not worth freaking out over, because it's simply easily fixable. Then all you need to do is go back and try again. The way to learn if you've gone far enough is to just turn off and on your adjustment layer. You will see it right away, believe me. Next, I'll lighten this up a bit as well. Let's zoom out again. Keep some focus here. Now we're dodging a little bit of that under the lip. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to burn. I'm going to burn under the lip as well, that white patch that we tried to clone in. And what that's going to do is going to offer that natural transition the anatomy of the lip had, because it rolls off and you don't want to remove that. Also next to the lip over here, there's this white spot. People ask me to take that off all the time. It's just areas to pay attention to. I'll go back to my dodge. See, that noise is actually allowing me to focus on just the areas that matter. Because if I go in too far, it's blocking my view essentially. So it's helping me focus on just those areas. Because see, at this view, I turn on and off, it doesn't really impact the shades and transitions. But at this view, it impacts it. So it stops me from looking too deeply. It's a safety net for me in the beginning. And then eventually, when you get used to it, you can turn it off. But a lot of times, I just keep it on through the whole process because honestly, it makes it so much easier for myself when I do that. As I mentioned, I didn't do the rest of the stars right now just because the process was exactly the same. So keep that in mind. It's not me. I promise you, I didn't forget that on purpose. Let me continue on here. Do some of these little bits. You know what? It is really tedious. I can hear you screaming from your computer sometimes. But it's just part of the process. I mean, you know what? You have to do it. And as long as you know the rules, you should be fine. And practice is always the way. In case 2% is too slow for you, you can make it higher as well. But keep in mind, turn that layer on and off quite frequently. Gonna need to work some more. Let's do it loud enough. It's nice, right? Check that out. It's getting nice and even. Really beautiful. That's is where a beauty shot comes through. Let's also work on this bottom bit here. This transition's a little bit rough. Let's carve that out. Let's carve that out here. Let's go to our burn and burn that in. Go to our dodge again and dodge those out. This is why I also rotate, because now I'm seeing things that I really didn't pay attention to before. There we go. Now let's also turn off our curves layer really quick and just see how it looks in this view. You can see we even out those patches, and those patches are more noticeable when I darken the image. That's why I have it on. If you have an image that's already pretty dark, you don't need it. But in this instance, I think it's really important. The reason why I don't use frequency separation to begin with is because with frequency separation, what happens is you tend to over blur that initial layer, that base layer with all the tones. What that does, it tells me that, you know, when you have blurred tones, it looks like the image is blurred when you zoom out, to be honest with you. Even though the texture's on top, it doesn't even matter because you can see how blurred that transition is. You can see that there's no delicacy with it. It just looks like you blurred it and then added texture, and that's what kind of is what you're doing. So this is why I don't rely on that. Doing it like this allows me to keep a lot of naturalness in the skin. And it also flattens out the anatomy of the transitions when you blur with the frequency separation. And also, during the healing and cloning process, frequency separation also isn't a good idea because you're trying to heal the color and then the texture separately. With the healing brush on a blank layer like I've done, it does it both for you automatically, so it matches together. It's almost like, you know, when a couple wants to go eat something and one couple's like, I want pasta, and the one's almost like, I want Mexican, and they just never agree with each other. It's kind of the same thing. Like when you're healing and on a different layer of texture and color, sometimes you end up with different results, and that's not what you want. You want to do it together. And that harmony in itself is something that I feel is really advantageous when you're just healing with a blank layer. So you can see me doing some more work here. And the best part about this is you don't have to be ultra precise in this stage. You can, you know, play around and see what you like. You can leave some of these little areas here. I kept it at 3% now because I want to go a little bit faster now that you're used to it. I was going a little bit slow so you can see what I was working on. But lastly, let's go ahead and remove those little dark patches here. Again, don't get frustrated. This is the first time dodging and burning. This is something that will take practice. Also, you don't have to do everything I'm doing. If there are areas that are hard for you, don't do them right now. You know, build up to it. Do the areas that you can do. Turn the layers on and off. You'll get to see exactly what I mean. It's always an interesting thing doing a retouching session for photographers and retouchers because we all have our own processes, right? We all have our own methods and reasons why we do things. But ultimately, this is me showing you kind of what my process is, my workflow, and I want you to keep an open mind. You know, there may be some things that you do differently, and whether you like everything I'm doing or just some of the things I'm doing, you can integrate that into your own workflow. It doesn't have to be every single thing. But it does show you that, you know, things like this are very versatile, and you don't have to spend a ton of time doing them. Let's go into our burn here. And I'll go back to my dodge for a second to get rid of that patch. And basically what would happen is I'll continue like that. Let's also burn some of the eyebrows. Let's change the pace up a bit. Let's go in there and darken out these areas. Let's do a 5% flow. We're getting really risky here. 5% flow. There we go. So now with our dodge, we are going to do a little bit down here. I'm not going to do as much as we did in the face because I want to generally just show you the same thing over and over again. And, you know, it works. We already know it. But also, I want to leave something here to show you the pros and cons of frequency separation, because let me show you how it would look if you try to use frequency separation to even out some of this skin here, and what the benefits and cons are. One little bit here. It's addicting. I mean, when you start doing this and you start getting a hang of it, you'll want to just work on this entire image till it's absolutely pixel perfect, right? But sometimes, like in this instance, it's more about practice and application than reality, where you don't have to, we don't have time to spend for every single little pixel. And the good thing is I don't actually do it that way either. I don't spend 5 or 6 hours retouching every single image. I focus on the macro details, macro transitions. The micro ones I almost leave as is because it keeps that realness that I like on the image, where everything else is transitioned nicely. And, you know, within under half an hour, you can finish a beauty shot like that with dodge and burn. That's pretty nice. I mean, you know, I don't even know if we spent half an hour just dodging and burning, but it's good to know that it doesn't take an atrociously long period of time. You can finish something like that quite quickly. With hands, you know what, I try not to remove details on the hands except for unevenness in the tone. Because with hands, it's something where you don't actually want to adjust too much because it can be really noticeable. But some people do like softening the knuckles a bit. I do that with the clone tool. I soften them just a bit, or I dodge the lines in between the knuckles. And that seems to be something that can be doable without being so destructive. And the rest of it is all just evening out, because this is where the magic is, really. Showing you the process and why and the extent. Okay, let's focus now on before and after. You see the hand, how I'd lighten that up here? That looks really good. And obviously you could go more if you wanted to. You just continue on and do the same process. I think I'm going to do it. Let's go for it. And it's so light. That's why I keep putting these before and afters on, because, you know, even though you identify the area, sometimes I don't remove it completely. Sometimes I'm doing it a little bit at a time. Let's now focus on any of the face. Let's turn it upside down. I do this because, again, when I turn it upside down, I notice things. I didn't notice this part here, the chin. Sometimes I notice things I don't notice usually. And that's pretty cool. Let's do some of these lines here. That's starting to look really nice. I think I like where we're at. The type of beauty retoucher I try to keep some naturalness in the transitions. Again, like I mentioned, everyone has their own level of detail that they work in. Some people will take it even further. Some people will go further and lighten these little pores even more and darken them even more. And they'll just go on, but really it's up to you how far you want to go. And it's up to you to see, you know, if it's something you want to do or not. For me, it's not something I like to do. I don't like going pore level and doing every single little transition, because guess what? It looks like you're just back to, you know, some of the old methods. And keeping that realism gets me a lot of work. It gets me a lot of work because I come from a different mentality on how far I want to go with skin. Sometimes, yes, clients will ask me to go that far, and I'll gladly do it for them. But on a personal level, if it's up to me, then it just changes. I don't go excessively far with evening, even on beauty, because at a distance like this, it looks really clean on the face. Obviously, I didn't do the arm, shoulder and everything just yet, but overall, it looks pretty clean. You know, maybe a couple more minutes and we'll be done. And I'll show you really quickly what the before and after looks like, as well as the mask. Let me do that as well. Maybe some of this upper lip here. Let's see what else. Let's see what if I did the transitions. You see how I even out that transition as well in the eye makeup? Let's also, you know what? I can go back and even out some of this area here as well. Like that. Let me do 3% again. I'm just going to lighten up that beginning part a little bit. And also here, just a touch. And also lighten this up. Some people remove this altogether. I just ask whether they want me to. I don't take it as an obvious answer because it isn't. Some people do, some people don't. If you want to remove it completely, you can use your clone brush or healing brush. I like to keep it. It's just something for me that I think is a good area. I'm going to burn this bit here, this white bit. And I'm going to dodge the under bit here, so it's more of a beautiful transition. See, dodging that, and I burned that. So together, it created a nice transition. And there you go. Let's take a look and see if there's anything else. What I want to do right now, I'm going to bring that curve down again. And clearly, although there's more spots there that you can see, what matters now is what it looks like without it on. And then if you see something, you can come back and take care of it. But you know what I think I'll do? I think for now, I'm going to leave some of these areas so I can show you what frequency separation does in conjunction with the dodge and burn, in case there's some micro level things that you want to leave intentionally. And as I mentioned before, some of the pros and cons. Take care of that. It really does become endless. You feel like you want to do it forever, but I'm not going to. And a little bit of the chin. And then this little guy here. You know what? I don't ever feel like I'm ever done with retouching. Whenever I have an image that's done, it's done because it's gotten to a point where I sometimes can't be bothered to do more. You know, you'll always see things that you can improve on your own work. You'll never be done. But when you're done, when you feel like it's good enough. You're not done when it's perfect sometimes, because otherwise you'll just never finish. There's always things you think you can see to fix. But you know what? Sometimes a lot of that just is part of humanity. I mean, you don't want to remove everything. Otherwise, what are we left with? Just a little philosophical question for you there. Okay, let's see. A little bit more on this side. There you go. Let's turn that off. Let's turn the other helper layers off. And you see how we have something that's nice and clean? Really clean, right? Really clean. And we didn't even need to keep that off. We could do that without that even on. And the best part about that is that in case there's anything now that you want to take care of, then you can do that here. So you can go back and go to your cleanup layer. You can still go into your cleanup and define that accordingly. You can then just go back to your healing layer and do that. That is the bonus of this workflow. It allows you to be, you can section it off and really take care of things in case you still see them now. Because it is normal where you'll see things once you've done your process of dodge and burn and then be like, oh, you know, I should fix that. And because it happens, everything else starts standing out. Clone brush here, just quickly remove that shadow like that. And then I'll go back to my burn. And then I'll bring some of that shadow back. So basically, don't be afraid of cloning even though the shadowing is different or the lighting is different. There you go. So now we have a beautifully transitioned image with dodge and burn. And when you look at it to this extent, it still looks like everything's there. The texture's there, everything's beautiful. You know, you don't have to go too far, you don't have to overanalyze, and it still looks really, really nice. Now that we talked about dodge and burn, let's continue on to the frequency separation topic. And what we'll do there is talk about the pros and cons of frequency separation and see how it fares in comparison to dodge and burn as well.